Brighton, Hove and Worthing. This is BBC Southern Counties Radio.
And on public transport, still looking good on the trains, no reports of any delays or cancellations. You can update us, 08459 570057. I'm Stephen Cranford, BBC Southern Counties Radio Travel.
I want to outline on behalf of my union, the PCS, and the members who we represent, why it's absolutely vital, depending on us winning the vote tomorrow, that you join the strike. The Labour government since 1997, there has been more privatisation of civil service work than either the government of Margaret Thatcher or the government of John Major. I cannot promise that this strike and this campaign will stop the job losses, will keep the offices open, will stop the attacks on pensions. But what I can tell you is if we don't do anything, not only will it all happen, but it will happen faster and faster and faster and embolden the government and the employers to attack us even more.
Simon Weller, I bring fraternal greetings from the Brighton Aslef branch. And being Aslef, being train drivers, we are quite aware of the efficiencies of the cuts. As we will see as passengers, you'll see how efficient the railways have suddenly all become overnight. They've been cut to the bone, the staff have been cut to the bone. We are a model of efficiency, and I'm sure that if it goes ahead, that the public sector will become such an also model of efficiency. So with that, I will say this is a battle we can't really afford to lose when it's something as fundamental as the basic structure that holds the society together, which is provided by the public civil service. This Labour cabinet is not averse to destroying people's livelihoods. They are not averse to attempting to destroy their trade unions.
Once I'd started on the railways, it's very clear that it is a fraternity, and the people that are working for the railway aren't just working in a shop or aren't just working in some factory. It is almost vocational, that they are railwaymen and they are there to serve the passenger, the freight side, and it is all part of keeping the job going and keeping the railway. It's hundreds of years of history, and we really do appreciate that. I used to be very proud and very defensive of the railways, but now, no, I can't say that I'll hold my head up in the same way to say that I work for the railways. It's a matter of shame now. Our forefathers, put it twice dramatically, they handed the railway to us so that we could hand it on as part of a common service. But no, it's just being stripped, raped even.
Another disaster on the main line out of West London, even before the last one has finished being investigated. Two trains...
If the fears of the police and fire crews are realised, this will be Britain's worst ever rail disaster.
Two trains collided at the height of the morning rush hour. Hundreds of people found their journey to work had turned into a nightmare.
Data report prevented another blow to confidence in railway safety.
There would have been 3 rail accidents which could be directly attributed to privatisation or the process running up to privatisation. There were failures in all 3. These things had been pointed out prior to the accident. If they had been addressed, then the accident would not have happened. But all these things cost money, and because of the need for the private companies to be more efficient and save money, to make the profit for the shareholders, these things were never carried out. Yeah, that was the idea, to cut subsidy, to bring fresh investment, and it will be cheaper for the taxpayer, and everything will be so much more efficient and shiny. But that's the whole lie. It never happened. There is massive subsidy from the government, and the taxpayer is now paying a huge amount more than they were to the British Rail of 1997, 1998, because BR was the most efficient railway in Europe. So, even though it was running it on a shoestring.
May I have your attention, please? Due to a fault with the electrical supply system at Merstham, services are subject to delay, alteration and possible cancellation. I am sorry for the disruption that will be caused to your journeys this afternoon.
Initially, the private companies brought some investment, but it was only in paint to give the impression that things were changing. But it was really just wallpapering over the cracks. Now, 6-7 years on, the cracks have become too big to ignore. Now there are so many competing operators that to get a through ticket from one end of the country to the other it's a logistical nightmare. It started in 1979 and is still going on because the heir to Thatcher, the new Labour government, is still continuing with it. They're not repealing any of the old Thatcherite laws, so you know, but it's not over.
Step by step, we are rolling back the frontiers of socialism and returning power to the people.
I would credit Thatcher with everything. This is the whole movement now is it's an international movement of removing workers' rights, removing anything that gets in the way of making a profit, basically. And if having your workers have holidays, if allowing a culture of long hours to grow within the industry, this suits them because it means they make more money. It's all about making money. None of it's about freedom and democracy and shit like that. But an inordinate amount of damage has been done in the last 20 years. Privatisation ethos of the 80s under Thatcher was simply, I think, it was come down to free money. They conned the British public into buying through shares stuff they owned already. We already owned the gas board. We owned British Petroleum. We owned the electric companies. We'd paid for their investment. The building over the last 50, 100 years, we already owned it as a nation, and it was being then sold to us as being, you can own a part of our infrastructure. Well, we owned it already. The railway was the unprivatisable public sector, but then the major governments said they would rise to that challenge and provide an efficient railway through private competition. So they didn't introduce any competition. People believed the myth of privatisation and have been proved so sadly wrong over recent years. The actual day of privatisation, I don't think there was anything different. I just came to work, worked the trains, and they just ran the same as they always had. There was some legal manoeuvre where everything stopped running for 2 minutes at midnight and then started running again in the name of the new company. I think that was just, I have no idea why, they just had to stop for 2 minutes. But it was no different to begin with. When the initial privatisation, when we all ended up in different companies, it was viewed as a bit of a joke, particularly when the new uniforms appeared or the new branding and the badges. And with the company that employed me, Connex, it was confrontation was their method. They wanted to break the workforces. They wanted to, so that the workforces would agree to inferior terms, inferior protection, inferior pay.
Things are going wrong. Yeah.
They are looking for someone to make an example of.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it, though.
Yeah. So,
You want to speak to Bob?
Yeah, well, a uniform.
Oh, yeah, come and get it.
I'll speak to you later about it, anyway.
Yeah.
Phone call.
Right, it's your new uniform, Mr. Coulstock. 2 boxes. You just signed these 2 forms.
This is Bob's pile of old uniforms, and as we get the new uniform, we hand back the old one. And this is an example of one of the old ones from the first company that took us over. So we went from British Rail to Connex. And Connex said we were a centre of excellence and gave us a new uniform. And they gave us this rather subservient blue and this lovely stripy tie. And this looks very similar to an English school uniform. They dress us like school children and they treat us like school children. This didn't really change much. When we had a new company, when Connex was sacked, and we had a new company called Southern. And new company, new way of dealing things. We have a new jacket, but it's the same jacket, but it's green. And I have to say my wife hated these because her school uniform was this bottle green. So. Yeah. And this is the new uniform until we get a new company again and we'll have another uniform.
Can't you take it to the top? Right. Cheers, Bob. Okay. Thank you, mate.
Why wasn't the old one good enough anymore?
Well, I don't know. It's just, I think they just wanted a fresh start, really. It's, it does seem a bit wasteful, but it's what seems to happen these days. That they feel that it's worthwhile, you know. Yeah.
I'm sorry to announce that the 1907 Thameslink City Flyer service to King's Cross Thameslink is delayed by approximately 10 minutes due to a broken down train at London Bridge. Please listen for further announcements. I'm very sorry.
This is not cheap. One big beneficiary. This is where a lot of money goes. The government gives money to the private companies to run a better service, but we end up with new uniforms. So it's the company Wensum, supplies to the Queen, and they get the money. So we don't get better service. We get new uniforms. very important. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, they certainly uniform manufacturers have done very well, because there's over 20 different companies now instead of just one. And then I think it was a lot of pot luck. If you was lucky enough to be at a depot that went to one of the companies that were good, then you did quite well. Unfortunately, we ended up with one of the worst ones, so we felt it more than others, really.
When the Conservatives initially privatised the railways, they broke it up and they put the track and signal and property side of it to a company called Railtrack. The operation of the trains, which is running the passenger services, were let out on franchises, but the responsibility for maintaining the infrastructure lay with Railtrack. And Railtrack would then charge the private franchises an access charge to use the infrastructure. And unfortunately, Railtrack viewed themselves as, well, they had shareholders, they had a responsibility in law to their shareholders, and that was where it ended. They didn't have a responsibility to the railways. Railtrack didn't actually have any staff to speak of, because it was just contractors who would contract other people and contract contractors, and it almost became a no questions asked system. You know, we don't care how you do the job as long as you do it and you do it cheap. And what was happening is the job wasn't being done at all until we had the watershed of Hatfield. The Hatfield accident was the result of a piece of rail collapsing, and it didn't just break, it actually disintegrated whilst a high-speed train was passing over the top of it, which caused the high-speed train to derail at speed, and this resulted in the death of 4 passengers and 2 staff. Don't have brakes now. We drive train, drive train, drive train, change hands, drive train, drive train. Now, we used to have half an hour here where everyone used to nip up the room and have a quick cup of tea and then have a chat and then back out and drive trains. Whereas now, we don't have that half an hour. We're just here to work.
They can't do without us, drivers. They just can't do it. They'd love to, but they have to have drivers. It's other areas, the track and that where it just changed a lot. What for? You know, as if different train companies can compete. You know, like buses or aeroplanes. It was just the government, the Conservatives seemed to think you could make trains like aeroplanes, you know, offer different services, you know. Forget the fact that we're all running on the same lines. One breaks down and the other one's stuck behind it. It's not like a bus you can just overtake. Mad.
We're following another train. They've put a stopping train out in front of us, which is just shows what a mess this is. We're an express passenger train, and they've put a stopping suburban train out in front of us.
Who decides?
Whoever pays. The privatisation of Britain's railways is a good example of how not to do it. If they expect that the private companies are going to go there and provide a social service and provide proper investment and provide something long-term, then it's a good example that they won't. The private global companies are just simply after making money. It is simple as that. Capital and globalisation will just look for the most efficient route for making money and will move from one to the next. They won't provide a long-term solution because a long-term solution does not give them the short-term returns.